Hello everyone, welcome back to Life of Us, my blog on board gaming, geek culture and everything related to the Dungeons and Dragons board games. And in today's video blog, I will be introducing a new custom build for the Dungeons and Dragons board gaming series. And that is a Dwarf Cleric build, female Dwarf Cleric, which I'm quite excited to share. I've done this build, a couple of custom builds on my blog as well. One for recently a paladin and an assassin, as well as a druid and a necromancer build. This cleric is a new build, female dwarf cleric of the, let's say, the light domain. She has some really interesting stats and really interesting powers and abilities. Her build is built around the concept of fire, hence the light domain. And also she is something of a pyromaniac, as we'll see when we get into it. I've also included a 3rd and 4th level scoring ability, as we saw in Dungeons of the Mad Mage, which is the latest version of the D&D board gaming series. There's the ability to level up the characters to level 3 and 4, and the inclusion of things like expert power cards, and that's something that I've also done with this cleric build, as we'll see. So without further ado, let's dive right in and see what makes up our cleric build. Okay, introducing Aleri's Ironhouse, our female dwarf cleric. Her backstory says that she has been chosen by the Reverend Mother Barona Truesilver, and she seeks to fulfill her bond as a cleric and uphold the honor of a noble Ironhouse clan by purifying the lands of evil. It's a very noble cause for our cleric. She's a cleric of the light domain. The mini that you see over here is a Nolz's Marvelous Mini Dwarf Cleric, female dwarf cleric. These minis come in packs of 2. This over here is the second figurine which is in that pack. But I think for our cleric, this one suits that build a little bit more, as we'll see in a minute. I'll explain why I like the fact. Obviously, it could do with a bit of painting. I really need to start painting my minis, but I like the fact that she's got this magic emanating from her hands, as if she's summoning something, and we'll see in a minute what that is. This other figurine would also work quite well as a cleric, or even a fighter with a mystical axe or mystical weapon type fighter, or a dwarf void dwarf character. Cool, so let's quickly have a look at her stats. Okay, so over here we have her stats. These are still fresh from the printer. They haven't been cut and laminated yet. I'll have that done soon. In terms of her stats, okay, so we've got the backstory, a lady's Ironhouse, the dwarf cleric. In terms of her stats, her AC, HP, speed and surge value, it's indicative of most of the cleric archetypes in this game, as well as most of the dwarf archetypes in this game, with a speed of 5. I've yet to see a dwarf with a very high speed. Maybe in my next build I'll do a dwarf who's a little bit faster, quick-footed dwarf with a good pair of running trainers or ASICs trainers. We'll see when we get there. If I ever do such a character build, it will be quite fun. Standard AC of 16, HP of 8, and a surge value of 4. On 2nd level, those stats do go up as per most of the other cleric builds in this game. Cool, so let's look at her innate ability. Her innate ability is an ability called Sacred Fire, which says once per turn, you may forfeit your attack and summon a Sacred Fire token on your tile. You may spend movement points to move a Sacred Fire along with your hero. And then there's some small text at the bottom, which if I zoom in you'll be able to see. It says a maximum of 4 tokens in play at any given time. Okay, so what that means, if I just hop back onto the board. Okay, so once per turn, you can forfeit your attack action to summon a Sacred Fire token on your tile. So you can use whatever tokens you like to denote that. You can use the ones that I've included at the bottom of the blog post, these tokens over here, or you can use any beads or colors to denote that. I'm actually using these little plastic mini tokens or miniatures, if you like, from the Hellboy Kickstarter board game, which I received, and I think it's quite cool. These are Inferno tokens, if I remember, from the Hellboy board game, and they work quite well for this game. So she summons this fire. She still has, so she forfeits her attack to summon a fire. Sacred Fire token, but she still has her movement. You can also spend from your movement points to move these fire tokens around, and we'll see in a minute why that is beneficial when we consult her power cards. So her inherit power cards, there are certain, if you consult her character card, there are certain power cards that are inherent and innate to her character and that have to be in play when you start playing the adventure with this cleric. You need to have the following power cards: Song of Fire, Sacred Fire. Select, well, that should be 2 cleric utility powers, I've seen a misprint there, and 1 cleric at will power. So I'll just update the character sheet because the third line is incorrect. It should be 2 cleric utility powers and not 1. I'll update it on the blog and post it soon. But let's look at her innate power cards. The first one I want to talk about is her at-will power called Sacred Fire, and then we'll look at her other at-will abilities. Okay, so these are the power cards which are straight from the printer. I've got them all mixed up. But what I want to talk about, her innate ability, is the ability called Sacred Fire. So for this particular character build, I wanted the concept of fire to be to really manifest with this particular character build. And normally with clerics, there's always the healing factor for the rest of the party and how the cleric benefits that party through healing and spells such as blessing and guidance and those things. That we'll see in a minute when we get to the utility powers, but her innate ability is that of this fiery pyromaniac fire wielding cleric. So really that's kind of the build that I was going for. Her innate ability is this ability called Sacred Fire, which says that if she has a Sacred Fire token on her tile, she can move it adjacent to any monster within one tile and make a +7 1 damage attack against that monster. On the surface it seems like a fairly standard at-will. However, the subtext reads that you can do this attack multiple times for any number of Sacred Fire tokens you have on your tile. So in this case, if we had 2 monsters on this tile, we could perform that same at-will twice against both of those monsters to probably knock them out. Or you could even do this attack against a single higher powered monster to deal out some serious damage against that monster. You may argue that it is slightly overpowered, but bear in mind that she does need to forfeit an attack to actually summon these Sacred Fire tokens. And of course you can only have 4 of these tokens in play at any one given time. So there is a bit of trial and error to how you can get these Sacred Fire tokens in play. It's not completely overpowered, and I think it works well for her character. That is her innate at-will power, and that is called Sacred Fire. Her next at-will ability is called Divine Strike. And Divine Strike is a ranged attack. It allows you to attack one monster within one tile of you. It's a +6 1 damage attack. On the surface, again, looks like a fairly standard at-will. You don't need to have Sacred Fire tokens in play to make this attack. The one thing that does actually benefit this attack is that if you had a Sacred Fire token on the target tile, the monster that you were targeting would have a -2 AC, which definitely buffs up this attack a bit. One thing to note is that after making any attacks with Sacred Fire, where Sacred Fire token is part of an attack, like with the previous at-will, these tokens are immediately removed. They don't remain in play after a monster is defeated. So that is Divine Strike. The last at-will is Singing Strike. So apart from being a fiery pyromaniac, Illyris also has ambitions to become a great opera singer, or a great singer of fire music, fiery rock and roll, fiery opera, I don't know, some sort of fire type music. Yeah, well, okay, so just this attack, the Singing Strike attack, allows it to attack an adjacent character. It's a +7 1 damage attack, and if you have a fire token in play or adjacent to that character, it's again a -2 AC. One thing to note with these two at-wills, the Singing Strike and Divine Strike, is that if you had 2 monsters, you would choose which monster you were targeting, and that would be the monster that would have the -2 AC from that attack. So it doesn't apply to all monsters on the tile. Okay, so those are her base at-wills. It's the Sacred Fire at-will, the innate ability, the Divine Strike ranged attack, and then the Singing Strike adjacent attack. let's have a look at her daily powers now. Okay, so Aries has 4 daily powers as opposed to the standard 3 daily powers that the previous builds have had. Only reason for this is to increase the array of power cards for leveling up to levels 3 and 4. I'll go in sequence. The first one is called Song of Fire. That is another innate ability for her ladyship over here, and that says once per adventure she can summon all 4 of these sacred fire tokens on her tile. It can only be used once per adventure, but it's definitely a very powerful daily because you could deal out serious damage with this if you pair it with her at-will sacred fire base at-will. You could deal out 4 damage, or well, do 4 attacks against a particular monster just with this particular daily. Very useful card and a very useful daily power. Her next daily power is called the Divine Flame. Again, it's a ranged attack, and that says attack all monsters within 2 tiles of your hero. It's a +6 2 damage attack on a miss 1 damage. Again, the benefit from a Sacred Fire is that if there is a Sacred Fire token on the target tile, this attack automatically hits. You remove the Sacred Fire token after the attack. So that is very useful daily power that you can employ for quickly removing most of the level 1 monsters from a tile, as well as dishing out some damage to level 2 and level 3 monsters. The next daily is called Singing Flame. That's against an adjacent monster on your tile. It's a +7 3 damage on a miss 1 damage, and again if there's a Sacred Fire token on your tile, this attack deals out +1 damage, so it will probably definitely eliminate the hag if you hit her, because she's a 3 hit point. Again, a very useful daily for dishing out hard serious damage against higher level enemies. And that brings us to our last daily. Our last daily power is called the Redeeming Blaze. Again, use at the start of your hero phase. Until the start of your next hero phase, all monsters on a tile with a Sacred Fire token are stunned. So here we have monsters on a tile with a Sacred Fire token, and over there we have a thug with a Sacred Fire token. That means that all monsters, they don't have to be on the same tile as you, they don't all have to be on the same tile, they can be scattered around the dungeon, as long as there's a Sacred Fire token on that tile. When you play that particular deity, all those monsters are stunned. One thing to note is that those monsters can still make an attack, so if you are adjacent to them, so best steer clear of them, and it's also a quick way for the rest of the party to, while these monsters are stunned, to make quick work of them and get rid of those monsters. Very, very useful daily power. Now let's hop on and have a look at those party benefiting cleric utility powers that I was telling you about. Okay, so her utility powers, there are 5 utility powers that you can choose from. You can choose 2 at the start of your game, and as your character levels up, you get to unlock some more utility powers. Let's go through them in order. The first one is called Healing. Okay, so how Healing Song works is you use at the start or power during your hero phase, remove a Sacred Fire token and place it on that card, so it gets placed on the card, and then all heroes on your tile regain 1 hit point. So this is the healing power that we've been talking about, the party benefiting cleric powers. One thing to note is that the Sacred Fire token that you remove doesn't necessarily have to be on your card. It can be on any on your tile. It can be on any tile in the dungeon. Just remove it, place it on the Healing Song card, and all heroes on your tile then regain 1 hit point. Once there are 2 of these Sacred Fire tokens on the Healing Song card, the card gets flipped and you cannot use it again until the start of the next adventure. So very powerful utility card, that is Healing Song, for some much needed HP to your party. The next utility power is called Holy Shield, and this one is over there. We have a very nasty zombie beholder about to make an attack, and this one says remove a Sacred Fire token in play from the dungeon, and that attack then misses. You choose either yourself or any one hero on your tile, and that attack misses that hero. Again, once there are 2 Sacred Fire tokens on the Holy Shield card, it gets flipped and cannot be used again until the start of your next adventure, or some card flips it back up. So very useful for mitigating enemy attacks, and especially those very powerful ranged spell attacks that characters like or monsters like the Beholder or scary evil wizards that might pop up in the dungeon might throw your way. So useful utility power card to mitigate attacks from monsters. Let's look at the next one. Okay, the next utility is Divine Blessing, and again very similar to Holy Shield and Healing Song. This one is condition management. So if for any one hero in play, if they had a condition attached to them, whether it was stunned or poisoned or weakened, you can remove a Sacred Fire token currently in play to remove that condition from any one hero. You can do this again a maximum of 2 times before the card is flipped. So very useful card for mitigating conditions in the game. And there are certain conditions that you definitely don't want. For instance, stunned. There are some monsters that benefit from when a hero is stunned to deal out extra damage. Okay, so that is Divine Blessing. Let's look at the last 2 now. Okay, the next one is called Song of Guidance, and this is a quick way to navigate through the dungeon stack when you need to. How this works is use this power during your exploration phase. So during your exploration phase, when you are exploring a new tile, you can use this ability to make a second exploration by removing any Sacred Fire token currently in play, to explore again and place a new dungeon tiles and draw a tile from the top of the dungeon tile stack and place it adjacent to any unexplored edge on your tile. So it's a quick way for you to get through the dungeon if you were looking for a particular tile, trying to get to a particular location. This would be a very useful card for quickly exploring that dungeon and getting through it by doing a double exploration during exploration phase. Of course, all the standard conditions of that still apply. You still have to place monsters on the new tile. You just do not draw encounters for it. So very useful card. And last but not least is my favorite utility power, and that's called Hallowed Fire. How Hallowed Fire works is that you can remove a Sacred Fire token currently in play and place your hero as well as any one adjacent hero on any tile or on any square of the dungeon. So it's a very cool teleportation type card, and whoosh, just like that, Sacred Fire zooms you up, teleports you, beams you up to the Starship Enterprise, or well, in this case maybe not the Starship Enterprise, but you can then place your character and any one adjacent character on any square of the dungeon, any 2 squares of the dungeon. Very useful. Again, once 2 tokens are on the card, you flip it and cannot use it again until the start of your next adventure, or any other ability allows you to pop that card back up. One thing to note, from my previous one for Song of Guidance, I incorrectly said that you don't draw encounters when doing the double explore. That's not correct. You do. So if you did have Song of Guidance and you did explore twice, you would draw a card, draw a tile from the top of the dungeon stack during exploration phase, and then if you wanted to play Song of Guidance, you could draw a second tile. You still place monsters and draw encounters. The only benefit, of course, is that you are going through that dungeon tile stack much faster. Okay, so just some clarity on the rules there. Right, so those are the 3 basic power cards. Let's have a look now at the expert powers for this cleric. Okay, so let's look at the expert power cards for her ladyship Aleris. There are 3 of them. There's Gift of Light, Trial by Fire, and Fiery Wielder. I'll start from the right and work my way back. So one thing to note about expert powers is that they only come into effect when your character is at level 3 and at level 4. To get to those levels, you need to spend either coin or a ton of experience. So not easy to come by, but once you do come by to come onto this or reach this particular level, you get exposed to this really powerful expert power cards, which is really insane. Obviously the monsters in the campaigns as you progress do get progressively tougher, and the dungeons do get progressively harder. So having these expert powers in your array of powers is really beneficial for your character. Let's take a look at the Fiery Wielder ability. So Fiery Wielder says that in addition to her ability to forfeit an attack and summon a sacred fire token, she can now summon a second one. So it stays in play, the card doesn't get flipped. So whenever you forfeit an attack action to summon a sacred fire, you can summon an additional one. So that's essentially a very powerful, because we've seen how sacred fire tokens benefit her attacks, her at-wills, and all the different stats that, as well as the utilities, stats, power cards that make up the cleric build. So having two of these in play at any one time is pretty useful. The next one is a daily called Trial by Fire. And how Trial by Fire works is that you can choose a tile within 2 tiles of your hero, and you can attack each monster on that tile. It is a +11 attack, dealing 4 damage, on a miss dealing 2 damage. So it will most likely take out most of the first and second level character monsters on your tile, well, on a tile within 2 tiles of your hero. And then for any sacred fire tokens on the target tile, this attack deals +1 damage. So you can imagine the amount of firepower an attack like this can deal out in a situation where you're swarmed by monsters. So let's have a look at how that actually plays out by looking at the dungeon. Alright, so here we have a pretty nasty crowded dungeon. We've got a villain, we've got a zombie beholder, some low level monsters, as well as the biohag witch, and they could dish out some pretty nasty damage to any hero or any number of heroes in the vicinity. However, with the Trial by Fire expert power on its own, you could do a +11 4 damage attack to take out most of the lower level monsters that you see. But also, if you had any sacred fire tokens on the target tile, it deals a +1 damage. If you had all 4 sacred fire tokens in play, this could deal a whopping 8 damage, and on a critical roll a whopping 9 damage, which would be enough to take out, or at least significantly reduce, most of the villains, all the base villains' HP in this game. So if you paired this with your innate Song of Fire, which allows you to summon all 4 of these tokens. Of course, this is an attack action, so you'll summon it in one turn, and then you get to play it in the next turn, move them, spend your movement actions to actually move them onto the target tile, and then deal out the damage for Trial by Fire. That would be enough to wipe out most of these guys, which I think is a very, very powerful and a very useful expert power to have in your array. The last one of these expert abilities is an ability called Gift of Light, and Gift of Light is sort of an expert utility power. It says remove a sacred fire token adjacent to any one hero to end any one condition on that hero. So if you had your hero over here with a sacred fire token on that tile, just remove the sacred fire token and end the condition. The cool thing about this is that this card remains in play, it doesn't get flipped, so at any one time you can remove a sacred fire token to end a condition on any hero. So it's a utility power that remains in play in expert mode essentially. So that in a nutshell are the power cards for our Lady Aleri's Iron House, our fiery pyromaniac cleric. Really interested to actually see how she plays by taking us through for an actual playthrough in the game, maybe in the Dungeon of Mad Mage game, where we can actually have the leveling up to level 3 and 4, or Tomb of Annihilation even, and just see how she actually plays out. So really excited. As usual, if you do use the cleric in your campaigns for your gaming or for your board gaming sessions, and you do use her and you find anything with the mechanic that you think might not be working, please sign off in the comments below, or drop me a mail, or subscribe to my blog and drop me a comment or an email, or yeah, just let me know. I'm actually very excited to see how it plays and would like to hear your thoughts and comments on that. Until next time everyone, cheers.